This is upon further review from USCHO. And here's your host, Ed Trefsker.
Welcome to Upon Further Review for Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025. I'm Ed Trefsker alongside Jim Connolly and Derek Schooley, and this is the podcast where we look at some of the topics that maybe we didn't get to on Monday or something that may be a little bit more controversial. We teased this one on Monday, what college hockey's biggest arm race was. Is it NIL? Is it, I don't know, big wads of cash? Is it
sharing?
I don't know what it might be.
Revenue sharing?
Revenue sharing, that can be really big. But actually,
Private jets?
we're going to ask if
private
the biggest
jets?
private jets.
Yeah, you can do everything. I mean, it used to be.
I know that an airstrip is part of your plans for your new building at Robert Morris, right?
I mean, you could look
So you
at
have a place to.
you could look at the movie Blue Chips, cars, Lamborghinis, all that stuff. That's the arms race, right?
Wow. Well, there's another arms race too. What about spending money on buildings and renovations and so forth? I mean, the whole thing kind of got started, or maybe it got started almost 25 years ago with the new Ralph Engelstad Arena, which was $104 million in 2001 dollars, which is probably creeping up on the high, like 170, 180, 200 million now in our deflated dollars. But a lot of other teams spending money on buildings. They just opened the M&T Bank Center at Union, $55 million, which is pretty reasonable. $65 million is announced for Stonehill. Lindenwood's Centene Ice Arena, which is more of a community arena, not just for Lindenwood, but a beautiful building nonetheless. I mean, they had the regional there. That $83 million. $134 million at Mullet, which is a jewel there in the desert. Just opening up the Lee and Penny Anderson Arena at St. Thomas, $175 million on that. Western Michigan, it's going to also be an event center in Kalamazoo. $100 million already spent, according to their head coach in a conversation with Jimmy. $300 to $350 million for Northeastern to replace Matthews Arena. That's going to include more than just a hockey rink. Maine spent $50 million on their renovation. Munn at Michigan State had a bunch spent. Bentley and Pagula Ice Arena at Penn State over the last 15 years. There are others that we're not even mentioning. But is this a big concern around college hockey? Is every coach out there who wants a better building, are they looking for a new ice arena? Is it impacting things?
Up until about a year ago, yes. I think that was the way to get everybody something to differentiate your program from. I think now, NIL started to creep in. I think revenue sharing started to creep in. I think how you develop your players for pros starting to creep in. I think it's now all of it's a part of it. I think the building is a part of it. I think your strength coach is a part of it. Your assistant coaches are a part of it. I think there's more to it than just that one thing of a building. I think you could take them into the shiny new building toy that you may have, but there's also other things that they're going to want to know, especially the high level recruits. Because I'll tell you, Pagula is a lot older than some of the other buildings that Gavin McKenna was being recruited at. But there were other things that came into play, like NIL. Also, they went to the Frozen Four last year. So there's more to it than just the building. I think that you've got to look at the overall aspect, the holistic view of your program. And I think those are the things that people look at. Does the building help? Absolutely. The players want to be comfortable. The players want to be involved in that. But I think that there's more to it than just that. You want to give your student athlete a great experience. If you don't have a new building, what are you doing to make sure that you're taking care of your student athletes? And if you don't have it, that's what you can work on without putting $55, $60 million. You can make an investment that takes care of your student athletes on a daily basis really well.
Here's my whole thing is, when does money become too much? in college hockey right now. You just talked about the NIL money, Derek, this building number. But if I'm, let's just, put a hypothetical out there. I'm, somewhere in central United States thinking about adding a college hockey team. And there's plenty of incentive for me to do it. The number one thing I look at is what's the bottom line startup cost. And if the part of that startup cost is 9 figures into a building, that's a lot. So that's the only place I worry about when this becomes an arms race, that this could be what really keeps a sport from expanding. It's never going to bring in the money that football brings in. It's never going to bring in the money that basketball brings in from a TV revenue standpoint, from a sponsorship revenue standpoint. So when I'm an athletic director, when I'm a trustee of a university, am I now looking at college hockey as an unsustainable investment? That's the one thing I think that worries me. But yes, you have to build these palaces if you want to win some recruiting battles. Yes, you have to have a good NIL war chest if you want to win these recruiting battles. I think it all is now kind of going together at the same time. It's made the sport almost unaffordable for too many programs.
What about some schools that, or maybe leagues where things are falling behind with schools? I know that Atlantic Hockey America has been deliberately working, or the members have been working on improving facilities, but I'm also thinking about a league I get to travel to a bit, and that's the ECAC. There's been some stuff done there we didn't mention. Of course, we did mention Union. It hasn't been that many years that Colgate opened their new facility. Appleton Ice Arena up at St. Lawrence has done a lot of renovations and some great new facilities for student athletes. Dartmouth has announced some things a few years ago. It's probably been more than 10 years now for RPI. But you have some aging facilities that need some work. Is it even a challenge for conferences when they're trying to keep up with maybe what's happening in the Big Ten, for example?
I think one of the things that you have to look at is you don't want to get rid of the historic element of a building. You don't want to take away the charm of Lina. I had a really good conversation with Dan Bartholomew at Western Michigan. One of the neat things that Western did, they started the Lost and Lunatics. And you saw the Lost and Lunatics come out at the Frozen Four. How, when they go from a 4,000 seat building to an 8,000 seat building, are they going to be able to continue that fan base, that atmosphere, that excitement with that? They're on the side. They're down the side from blue line to blue line. Those are prime seating. That's the most expensive seats in the building. So now you build a $500 million building. How are you going to put them there? So, and he said, we are working with the president of Lost and Lunatics, their board, with their student board, to make sure that we're putting them in the right places and working with them. They were involved in the groundbreaking ceremony, the president of their student association. So I think that you don't want to lose the charm in a Lina, in a Thompson, I think it's Thompson Arena at Dartmouth, I think, is that what that's called? You don't want to lose a charm of the Bright Center at Harvard. You don't want to lose that charm while expanding and while making it more for the facilities and more for the players and all that stuff. So I think that there's a fine line you're walking when you're doing some of this stuff. I hope that makes sense.
No, it doesn't. I can speak from experience on that, seeing what happened with RIT, with Ritter Arena.
Great point, Ed.
Which was 2,100 seats and a smaller than NHL size ice surface, 2,100 capacity, maybe 1,500 people could cram in there and seat, and then a lot of standing around the outside. Now, Gene Policini Center with 4,300 takes a lot more people to get that filled up and get the atmosphere. Now, when it's full, like we saw a couple seasons ago, when it was 98.5% attendance on a sold out game for the league championship, it was, but you get people in there. And let me put a plug in for that arena for the for the women's team at RIT because I saw what can happen with atmosphere for that. Last Friday night, as part of homecoming weekend, they played St. Lawrence, beat them 4-1. St. Lawrence ranked at the time. They had 1,947 attendance, which set a record for that team. And here's this Atlantic Hockey School that's right now fourth in the country in average attendance among women. You get that number in there, you get girls youth hockey in there and a lot of students, you can build an atmosphere, but it takes a while from something that was naturally too small and very loud into a bigger, more comfortable arena to make that transition.
I think that's a really strong point too, because you look at the schools that went small with their reconstruction. Union, we just mentioned. Bentley certainly goes into that. Quinnipiac got bigger when they built the arena, but it's still a good size for them. It's not an overly, large building, hard to fill. I go back to places like I grew up in Walter Brown Arena at Boston University, and that was one of the toughest buildings to play in. Agganis, I'm not going to call it easy, but it is easier because it takes a really big, powerful, excited crowd to kind of even come close to matching that atmosphere. So when these schools build and they want to get into the big capacity buildings, that's when I think you even get more of a problem because you're almost taking away some of the home ice advantage. I could never imagine Alfond Arena not being in Maine. And they just did that massive renovation. It'll be a better building, but that building is all atmosphere. I think Liner Rink at Cornell is another example. So there's ways to build and there's ways to improve. And I think sometimes the improvements are more beneficial if you can maintain atmosphere. You don't want to lose that great advantage of home ice.
I loved Ritter Arena. I thought Ritter Arena, the electricity in that old place that was off the charts. And I think you lose a little of that going to Gene Policini Center. And it's still a nice building, but you just lose that intimacy. And that comes from going to Yost. Now I'm going to go from Yost to the newer building at South Bend at Compton Family Arena, which, believe it or not, is now close to 20 years old. And that's crazy to think that that's been almost 20 years. And I guess it comes down to is what's your preference? Do you want the new shiny toy or do you want the historic charm? And that's what's your preference, because they're all got something you like in a different way.
We forgot to mention UConn. UConn went from a building without charm to a fairly compact arena for Hockey East standards, and that's been terrific.
You raise a really good point there too, and I'm glad you brought that up, Ed, because when UConn was being considered, Hockey East had a standard that you had to have 4,000 seats in the building, and Steve Metcalf was becoming the commissioner about the same time as the groundbreaking. He was commissioner when the ground was broken. And it felt like a negotiation, and there was maybe we'll let them play some men's games here. Well, now you play almost the entire UConn home slate there. The atmosphere is fantastic, and I don't think anything has taken a step back for the league. I think the league and Steve Metcalf would agree that Toscano is everything that league needed, and you also have this building that's really ideal for the women's team to play in as well. So it serves both masters and it keeps the atmosphere in there. I didn't look up. I don't know what the exact dollar figure was on that one, but that was another high price tag. But they did it in a manner that didn't go so over the top that it was a building that had no atmosphere.
To conclude, because I know we're getting long, I'm at the point where we're starting to look at new arenas. If anybody out there really wants to put their name on a building and they've got about 60, 40, 50, 60, give me a call. Million, not just $60, million. Give me a call.
I was going to say, I think Venmo
Nope,
you the
I got
60
40,
bucks gold.
50, $60 million.
if there's a million people with $60.
Yep, we can work something
That'll
out.
work
Yep.
too.
I got this. I got a place we can put your name, and we could probably do a lot more for you than that.
So I got to mention one more arena, which is an oversight on our part. I don't know why we forgot the state of Connecticut, but what a difference Martiri Family Ice Arena has made for Sacred Heart University. I remember the days of them playing in the 660-seat Milford Ice Pavilion, and now, and then downtown in Bridgeport, and now to have that jewel, absolutely a gorgeous facility. And if you ever get to see what's underneath it for the student athletes and all the dressing rooms and everything, that's fantastic. And I know that's made a difference for that program as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really did. And that was an example in Atlantic hockey where you had a big building because you had the access to the AHL building down there in Bridgeport, but it was more beneficial to still build something on campus. And I think that Sacred Heart did a great job by raising the money for that.
Yeah,
building.
you can't have a big empty building. And I know that was one of the sad things with American International. They had a nice AHL building in downtown Springfield, but if you only have 200 or 300 people in there, it really is like a cave. But that's one of the difficulties for a smaller school. But I guess we'll wrap it up. I don't know if we answered the question. I guess it's one part of a multifaceted arms race.
We realize
and maybe
that
there's
people
some
are
other
gonna
things
call
that are
me.
bigger deal. Well, that's all right. You'll get text messages and the whole bit. Anyway, we'll wrap it up there. For Jim Connolly, for Derek Schooley, I'm Ed Trefsker, and this has been Upon Further Review from USCHO.